What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswave. Last generation for the Switch 1, there was certainly no shortage of Nintendo coming up with some weird ideas to introduce to it, and now, based on some recent filings that were found online, seems like Nintendo still has quite a few weird ideas in the holster for the Switch 2, and we'll go over that here today. Also, we are going to be talking about what looks like just a ridiculous controversy that's been spreading around online over the last couple of days, but it does once again bring up the concept of expectations from players and budgets for some of these games, and if they can ever truly meet somewhere in the middle. And we also have a new report around last generation for the PlayStation 4. Since that continues to roll along here in 2025, it does look like that we're finally coming to the end of it. All that and more. Guys, if you enjoy these videos, make sure you hit that like button. Helps out a ton. And if you're new here to the Spawn Wave channel, make sure you subscribe down below. And of course, members for the channel do get Newswave early. If you would like to learn more about that, click the join button or link in the description down below. And we're going to start today with a new application that was announced by Nintendo, and it's coming towards the end of this month, and it's Mario themed. In fact, it reminds me very much of an old game from the 90s, which, well, let's take a look. This was posted, this is over on Gamatsu, where they say Nintendo has announced the free app Hello Mario. It's for Switch, iOS, and Android. It's part of their My Mario, which is a new series of Mario-themed products for young children. And this is coming out August 26th. And with it being a free smartphone app, or even on the Switch, of course, it's going to be easy for just about anyone to check this out. But when I started to see the video for it as they were showing it, it reminds me very much of just Mario 64, where you could have the little hand in the beginning of the title screen and just start pulling and stretching Mario's nose or ears. And it was really cool back then when people figured it out, and then it kind of spread through word of mouth, and you could hold a button and leave Mario's face in this really contorted, crazy looking way. But that's immediately what I thought of there. And this is just Nintendo once again reaching out to the younger audience through way of smartphones or tablets and stuff to, yes, introduce them to Mario at an early age. It's all part of their plan to basically make people lifelong Nintendo fans right away. Also, Sony has been very serious about keeping web browsers off of their systems, and even though people with the PS5 have been able to find different ways to access the hidden web browser, Sony has been there at every pass trying to cut it down. Well, once again, players have discovered other ways to open this browser. So, for example, there are a couple that are actually posted up over on Reddit right now. One was found through the system settings, so you can actually go through and then end up in a web browser and just start browsing around the internet. The other uses Minecraft to get to the web browser on the PlayStation 5. You might be wondering, why is Sony so serious about making it so this is inaccessible? Well, they put it in their terms of service, so if you kind of try to get around it, I guess they can ban you for it. Really, it comes down to them being concerned around security flaws, because the web browser has been a popular way for some of their previous systems, like the PS3 in particular, has been blown wide open by a web browser. So after that, we're going to see if we can work away from that. In the PS5, they certainly wanted to get completely away from it so they can make sure the security was patched as much as possible. And I guess they also figure, when you have a phone, like, there's so many ways you can access a web browser. I guess they're trying to figure out how many people really need it on their console. But still, it was just one more feature being removed that we had with something like the PS3 even back in the day that didn't go so well for them. Technically with the PS4 as well. Oh, and here is an interesting post over on Twitter X. You can see this is from Extreme Consoles, and they're showing off this clear, like see-through Xbox Series X casing with all the internals, and people were going crazy over this thing. And I know clear consoles have been a thing for a while now. People were cutting out windows in their old Xbox 360s and putting like acrylic in there with lights so you could see through it, and that was a whole thing that was fun. I don't know, this looks kind of weird. The thing to me is, a lot of the internals don't look very appealing when it's all stacked up and running. I think you need lights and some other stuff in there, but for many other people, they may look at it and go, hey, it's kind of cool just to be able to see the inside of the system. If you want the clear system to work well, I think you also need the clear disk drive. So when you put the disk in, you can see it spin up. But hey, in another generation, we probably won't have to worry about that anymore. And guys, with some of the quick news out of the way, let's get into the bigger stuff. Let's start right away with Nintendo and just some of the weird stuff they tend to do with their consoles. with the Switch, they had all kinds of strange ideas. I mean, they were selling people cardboard with Labo, and while it was funny at face value, there were some pretty impressive things that the engineers behind the scenes making it had to figure out so that they could show people how to fold up cardboard and turn it into even an entire robot, where you could play out as that in a game, and the Joy-Cons and stuff were able to track. That stuff was quite interesting to see how they were able to figure it out. But they just did a lot of stuff with attachments and other interesting ideas for the IR sensor and others. Well, here, it looks like they are also planning some stuff up for the Switch too. And this was discovered in a few patents, which you can see this is posted. This is over on their social media account for Nintendo Patents Watch. And I saw that saying, yeah, that's kind of interesting. But the thing that really caught my eye is how Nintendo was planning to accomplish some of this stuff, because it's important to note that when you see patents, it doesn't necessarily mean that any of the stuff is going to come out. Now, sometimes it does. So as an example, they have one part here that's a crank that would attach to the side of, looks like, the left Joy-Con 2. And the crank have two magnets on it that would attach fine to the Joy-Con itself. But they could still do a crank, it just wouldn't necessarily be exactly like this. And the big thing that they're pointing out is how they're able to accomplish the detection of the crank being turned. And what they are doing is using that mouse optical sensor on the side of the Joy-Con to detect as the crank is being turned. There's a little disc in there that seems to reflect it, and I assume they have notches or some other stuff so that it can essentially count how many times you're turning the crank around, or how fast you're turning it, or slow. And then I guess you could do, say, a fishing game. That was really cool, and that's the part that I'm most intrigued by. Is Nintendo using that optical sensor for more than the Joy-Con just being a mouse? These are creative things that you would expect Nintendo to figure out and make us realize that there is more than just, oh, you can move in Drag X Drive, or when you're moving around on the home menu for the Switch 2 and use it as a mouse there with a cursor. No, you can use a crank, or they have another one here, which is a clickable wheel. Okay, so this is once again using the mouse sensor, and they show a side view of it and it kind of being see-through to where you can see that there's multiple gears that are alongside of each other, and one eventually gets down to the mouse sensor, the optical sensor, and then spins in front of it to tell it that you're turning that top gear. Or in then that case, the clickable wheel. Whereas when you press in, you also then just hit a button, it looks like there. That's some interesting stuff, interesting ideas from Nintendo to sort of problem solve and figure this stuff out. Now, I do think Nintendo will come up with some weird ideas for those optical sensors beyond just them functioning as a mouse, and I think this is sort of the direction they would go in. Have attachments to the sides where you can take one Joy-Con, and all of a sudden, I mean, with a crank, you'd have to hold one side of the Joy-Con, the other would then be like a fishing rod, or maybe come up with ways to hold on to the attachment, and then the Joy-Cons can go flying around. I don't know. Nintendo's, again, going to come up with some weird stuff, I'm sure. I just thought it was kind of neat to see them think outside the box when it comes to those optical sensors for detecting a mouse, because for the most part, I wasn't thinking about this at all, but I guess Nintendo, once again, coming up with some weird stuff behind the scenes at R&D does make you wonder what doesn't get out of the idea phase there, because that must be some crazy stuff. Next up, let's talk about a kind of a ridiculous controversy that was going around online, but I mean, it blew up on social media, so much so that some of these videos and comparisons that were being made and discussed, we're talking 20 million views. I mean, it is incredible how fast this spread online in the matter of 24 hours. But it once again brought up the conversation of where are player expectations with some of these releases that are coming out? Because we hear about budgets on one side that keep going up because they have a certain bar that they need to meet, but then players on the other side telling them, hey, you don't have to do all this stuff to make a fun game. Well, for example, this is one of the messages that were going around. This was over on Twitter X. Now, this is from Nick Tech. Said, in case you're wondering, Mafia the Old Country doesn't have swimming physics just like previous Mafia games. That was enough for this to circulate to the tune of 18.5 million views. Just because they were just walking around in the water. There were some fun responses to this. I think Jez Gordon asked if you can space travel in the game and some other stuff. So we've discussed this before, where the idea of If something in the game is not fundamental to it, so one example would be foliage, maybe off the main path that you'd normally be playing on. Let's say you're in a jungle and you go so far off where the game isn't necessarily even taking place, it's just more of their scenery, and you clip through it. Is that a deal breaker for people? All right. I guess some would say, well, how much does the game cost? Well, in this case, Mafia: The Old Country, it's a $50 game. And Hangar 13 and 2K, Take-Two, they've been very upfront that this game is not a $70 AAA big budget. Hey, we're going for it here with this title. No, they presented it as, we're going to control the scope for this, the budget for this, and we're going to put out what we think is a good experience in terms of a narrative-driven story. I'm up to chapter 6, I think, in this game, and it's been pretty good so far. From what I can tell, though, a lot of the big world that they've built is mostly just background. Like, it's there kind of to be scenery and to try to give you a sense of a large world around you without it really being there, okay? So that, and then I see this one that also blew up. This one was almost 22 million views. Mafia: The Old Country being compared to Red Dead Redemption 1, and it was just, I guess, the NPC chopping wood from GTA 6 Countdown, and that was kind of it. I don't know. I don't know if they're trying to build up Red Dead Redemption or beat up Mafia: The Old Country, but this is the thing, right? These budgets keep going up, and it's because my concern are that these companies see this stuff going around online and go, oh, okay, maybe we really do need to boost up the budget, and some of the, they seem like fine little details that shouldn't really be the big focus, but apparently people are noticing, so we need to put an extra $100-some-odd million, another year, 2 years or whatever in development, and then we now have to have our expectations that this thing sells 7 million copies, or who knows what happens to the studio. That's sort of what we've been, a lot of people, I'll say, I don't say not everyone, but a lot of us have been like, oh, okay, you guys can kind of pump the brakes here. Not everything has to be these crazy, detailed, over the top, over-engineered, almost overproduced games. Sometimes if a game's just fun, that's going to be enough. Now, visuals still play into it, of course. You have to have decent enough graphics, but I think playing Mafia looks great for a $50 game, and I've been enjoying my time with it. Now, it's also 10 to 13 hours, so some people might go, it's not really worth the 50. Maybe I'll get it when it's 20. And they know that, like Take-Two and stuff. It'll eventually go on sale, and they'll continue selling it there. But this is just something that has been discussed, and really the industry's been wrestling with for a while. Where are the expectations right now from players actually, and where does that mean the budget has to be, whether it's a $50, $60, or $70 game, or now, hey, $80 game? I mean, who knows how far we'll push with GTA 6 coming up. But let me know what you guys think about this down below, because I was surprised how much traction this got online around the idea of there not being swimming physics in Mafia: The Old Country, a game that's not at all about swimming. Next up, let's talk about last generation that is still technically hanging around, that being the PlayStation 4. Recently, we talked about how Genshin Impact is going to be discontinuing services for the PlayStation 4, mostly citing technical issues, but I feel like a lot of people have been moving to the PS5 since there's more than 80 million systems now out there in the wild. So from, I guess, for Genshin Impact, they look at that and go, okay, not as many people signing in there. Let's start focusing our attention on the platform that the vast majority of console players in our game are using. Well, it does appear that many other companies are also starting to look in that direction. This we can see is posted. This is over on gamesindustry.biz, saying it's not the only reason that 2026 is an important year for the console market, though. It was widely reported this week that Hoyoverse will discontinue PS4 support in Genshin Impact next year, but this is not an isolated move, with many other operators of major online and live service titles also eyeing up the timeline for dropping PS4 support. And yeah, I think any of the big games that still have the PS4 logo hanging around, yearly sports titles, whatever, Call of Duty for this year, I think this is going to be the last year. Now, Sony themselves have already said that they're moving to just about basically only PS5 titles. There might be a PS4 game thrown in here or there for PlayStation Plus starting January 2026, but for the most part, we're just going to see the PS5 logo and no more PS4 games going in. So even Sony themselves moving away from it for what they have already told us many times. Each one of these meetings with investors where they do Q&A, they keep saying that subscription services are very important to their bottom line, and even they are moving on, it feels like, from the PS4, as they are saying January 2026. So yeah, look, the PS4 had a very good run in it. 2026, which it'll still get a couple of third-party games here and there, that's very impressive. That's 13 years. If you bought a PS4 when it first came out and you're still playing it now, even if you're still playing it in 2021 or 2022 when you were kind of waiting a year or two to go to the PS5, yeah, I'd say you got your money's worth for $400. That's pretty good. So the PS4, good generation for it. I feel like just when it was all said and done, got some good titles, and that was the most important generation apparently to win, according to Phil Spencer. And well, we can see the numbers. It seems like they certainly did. And in our last bit of news, let's talk about Dragon Age, specifically the idea that EA could remaster some of the older Dragon Age games, like fan favorite Dragon Age Origins. Well, unfortunately, it seems that EA is not interested in doing that. This was bit of a surprise to me because it feels like it should be almost easy cash-in for them, just based on the way that the fan base really looks at that game and has even called for it themselves. Well, this was in a recent interview over on Mr. Matty Plays over on his channel, and we can see this is posted. This is over on Video Games Chronicle, saying, speaking on Mr. Matty Plays YouTube channel, Mark Darrows, a former BioWare executive producer, joined the studio in 1997, worked there for nearly 24 years. Said EA wasn't keen to remaster the first 3 games in the series in the same style as the Mass Effect Legendary Collection, which is a very good collection, by the way, and it's consistently on sale for less than $10. That's easy recommendation right there. But he says, quote, one of the advantages that Mass Effect has for a remaster over Dragon Age, it's all Unreal instead of 2 different engines. But actually, just the fact that it's Unreal means you can remaster Mass Effect essentially for money. If you're willing to spend money on it, you can go to an external house and they can do most of the work, which is sort of what happened with Mass Effect Legendary Edition. There were a bunch of people at BioWare working on it, but it was, I don't remember how many, but it was not a ton. So they were able to outsource a lot of that because, yeah, it's Unreal Engine, and like almost the entire industry, especially a lot of the contractors, know Unreal Engine very, very well. This is like a prerequisite at this point because so many studios use Unreal Engine. So here, though, with Dragon Age, yeah, multiple engines, I get that, but it's still weird to me that they don't go back and pick out Dragon Age Origins and do a full remaster and sell it just by itself, or even a remake. That's probably the best path forward right now for Dragon Age in general, because after Veilguard, I think they kind of need that easy win for the series just to show that it's still somewhat relevant. And Dragon Age Origins, provided they don't, okay, I'm assuming they wouldn't mess it up. Providing they don't mess it up, they stick to the source material and give a lot of the fans what they would want, which is mostly a one-to-one recreation with some quality of life stuff around, say, controls and certainly visuals. That seems like an easy $50 game. Like Skyrim Remastered, it seems like you'd be able to pull that off and sell millions and millions of copies without too much issue, especially if it's good. Like then the fan base will basically work for you and go out there and just try to sell Dragon Age, online. So seems strange that EA is apparently not interested in that, but who knows? Maybe they'll turn around in the future and go, you know what? We will grab Origins, we'll break the glass, we'll hit the button, and we'll make this a reality. And before we go to the comment of the day, we'll take a look at the poll that I posted up yesterday. We're asked, do you have a PS4 hooked up right now? 74% say no. Look at this, though. 26% say yes. Now, a lot of people were saying, I have a PS5 that works fine for backwards compatibility, so no. Some were saying they're still playing the PS3. The PS4, so if you just have a base PS4 and you're playing it, looks kind of crunchy for some of the games. The PS4 Pro does still clean up pretty nicely, but the thing that I'm reminded of when I go back to that generation are the load times. And it's something that I feel like we kind of have taken for granted now. We just don't see as many load screens as we used to. It was at times pretty consistent. You'd see a load screen for a minute, 2 minutes for certain games. And that was the time where people would get their cell phone out and scroll through whatever. And now it just isn't really a thing. It's pretty seamless now. You fade to a black screen, you fade right back into the next scene without any real issues, So that to me is the most jarring thing when occasionally I will turn on the PS4 for a video or something. It's like, wow, we really sat around and watched a bar fill up a lot. And we'll finish up with the comment of the day as you're seeing here. This is from Moon Cooper, who says, "Get off the internet, I need to make a phone call. No, mom, I'm playing StarCraft with my friends." Yeah, that was the worst. So with dial-up, you took up the phone line. So if your mom or dad or whoever picked up the phone, they would hear like the worst like screeching noise in their ear. Cause a lot of times you'd pick up the phone and you just put up to your ear to see if there's a dial tone. So you would go like, you'd pick up the phone and without even thinking about it, it'd go right up to your ear and it'd just be this terrible screeching noise. And then your mom's already probably annoyed at something when you were younger and you picked it set her off completely now. So she's happy that she kicked you off her game. Cause when you do that, you also completely break the connection for the most part, and then you're kicked out of your StarCraft game or whatever. That was just the way it was, and it really was a revelation, wasn't it? When broadband came around, and all of a sudden you could talk on the landline while playing your game. Yeah, we were impressed by some pretty basic stuff back then. And ladies and gentlemen, that's gonna do it here for Newswave. If you enjoyed this video, guys, hit that like button. If not, hit the dislike. Leave comments down below about everything we talked about here today. If you missed yesterday's Newswave, I'll leave it up here on a card. Or maybe you want to check out the latest episode of the Spawncast where we talked about the week in video games. I'll leave that in a video right below this. Thanks guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.